Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-affleck.
And it's time for...
You get a survey, and you get a survey, and you get a survey, and you get a survey. Unspun.
Just poking me with that finger pointing.
Oh my God, we got some themes today. We got surveys, we got pointing fingers, we got everything today.
Petition wars. Let's start with petition
wars.
I'm so mad at all of this that we are right back where we were a year ago and going down the same. And those pylons are going up the morning after the park board meeting. Like, let's be clear. The morning of March 9th.
I can't imagine it's not going to pass. I just can't imagine. I mean, unless they come to their senses. John Cooper from the NPA is going to try and do a referral, which send it back to staff for them to do their work. I think that's the thing that frustrates me about this whole process this year and last year on both sides. They're both, and that's kind of my opener, is like, you're doing all these surveys that are completely unscientific. It's great that they have this energy and you want to do your poll and you want to talk to people. You want people to fill out, whatever system that you're using. But it doesn't provide true information that politicians should be making decisions on. When you make evidence-based decisions, there is sometimes an instinct about what do the people feel. As a politician, you that's kind of your job. You kind of go, I get a sense that people really hate this. But that's not how you should only make your decisions. You should make your decisions on reports from staff and information that's actual truth. And so we have these two polls now battling out. Our poll is bigger than your poll on both sides of the issue of these bike lanes at Stanley Park. And of course, their issue is heated on both sides. Of course, there's going to be lots of people complaining and filling out forms and filling out surveys and filling out,
petitions.
It's like petitions.
Petitions
On these. It's just like almost the internet has made this thing a nightmare for politicians because it's so easy now to build up a huge petition.
And you've said in the past that from a political perspective, petitions are not all that effective at the end of the day.
You don't know the science behind them. The ones that are done by special interest groups especially, you don't know the science. You don't know how far reaching the people who have filled out this information might be. You don't know if it's somebody's cat and their dog and their whatever. I mean, you really don't know. And that is the whole point of why, and we're waiting for a staff report back from Park Board about the bike lanes. They should wait for the report back from staff. And you may hate staff and may say staff are incompetent and they're all in a take or whatever. It's like, okay, but you can decide that, but let's look at the report first and look at the science, look at the data, look at who they use, what polling company or what survey company or whatever, what experts were brought in, where the people were from that filled out this information. Was it balanced? Did it represent the issue at hand? Was there an option
of saying no? Because that's the one thing that's troubling from the staff perspective. Right? There are those polls that you really don't have an opportunity to disagree with. And we've seen those coming from City Hall. And that's where the public starts to get a little roughly on. The feathers get ruffled. But that doesn't mean that, the echo chambers are equally as loud in terms of the for and against shutting down one lane on Park Drive in Stanley Park, again, to create a velodrome for the click-in cyclist lobby, because that's what it is. That's what it is. This isn't about a greater opportunity for community engagement, because otherwise we're limiting that park to only people within cycling distance. That it just doesn't make sense. And for all the people, as Tricia Barker, NPA Park Board Commissioner, said time and time again, like the reaction from those who suffer from both physical and cognitive disabilities, who do not have an option of riding a bike, have their options limited exponentially, and the removal of disabled parking spots and accessibility to Third Beach or Beach Avenue is really contentious. There's a lot
on business. The impact on business is there.
But the business is the next level. Like the next level of this is, can you imagine having invested your life's work to Prospect Point or to the tea house and having it not just decimated by a pandemic, but have the governing body that's supposed to protect the park, like the people that say, like John Cooper, who saved the Bloedel Conservatory, basically single-handedly saved that beautiful spot in the city. Thank goodness for that. For those of us who grew up going there on all of those rainy days and seeing butterflies, you know, I also feel that way about stopping in at the Tea House restaurant. That's where I went with my grandma all the time. If it closes because of the cyclist lobby, I'll be pissed. So obviously my point
it's
is
over this year if it doesn't.
right. But I'm signing one petition because I'm that mad about that. And I'm equally mad about the Green Party's petition that's going out to all those like diehard lobbyists who I've completely blocked and muted on my Twitter. So at least I'm not getting attacked anymore.
Well, it's also, yeah, that's nice. It's always nice to mute. The other issue, of course, is, you know, you touched on it. The mayor himself is doing these data mining. This is data mining. The Green Party has put out that poll. This is data mining to find out who their supporters are, who they then can go ask for cash. They can go, you know, get them to show up to vote. It's the most cynical ploy you can do in politics. I mean, Vision did so many of the mayors doing one every few weeks. He's got some issue. You do these questions. Oh, do you love transit, or do you like this or that, or, you know, fill out this form and tell me. And then you go, okay, thanks for your email address. Now I get to, because that's the rules. We have spam laws in Canada, but if you're elected, the spam laws don't really apply. You're allowed to communicate to anybody, really, if you have their email and their phone numbers. So,
and sometimes even when you don't get elected and you have access to those emails, you can still use them.
There's quite a few wannabes out there right now. You know, I have pretty good lists, and I don't use it the way I should, I suppose. Yeah. But I'm neglecting my poor little list.
You brought up transportation there, and I know we didn't touch on this pre-meeting, pre-UnSpun. Mm-hmm. By the way, are you following George _affleck on Twitter, or at Jody with a Y Vance, Jody Vance on Twitter, and UnSpun podcast, of course. Because we often tweet or retweet topics that we unpack here on UnSpun. You're reading the Orca.ca, of course. That's probably where you found us. But did you hear about this, the TransLink gondola to SFU sort of controversy that's starting to brew now, as TransLink has given the preferred path of the gondola? And I heard on CKNW, I believe with Mike Smith, a resident who was quite calm and sort of unspun in how he was coming at this, but basically just saying, like, I don't want a gondola going over my house while I'm sleeping in my bedroom. Like, he was like, there's got to be a better way. Can we not do it on the golf course? Like, and therein lies the need for public consultation, the discussion. It's not about how cheap TransLink can make it. It does have to do with the people it impacts. And so whether it's TransLink and the gondola, or Strathcona and the encampment there that affects that community, or what we're talking about at Stanley Park, or how our homeless crisis is impacting various communities around the Lower Mainland, like, the public consultation involved in that, I think, feels broken to me, George. And I know you have a greater insight into how people can communicate when people feel like there's no other way to push back on the policies that feel rammed down their throat, pardon me. What other avenues can be taken? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's true. You have, it's challenging because, I mean, I joke about these individual data opportunities and collection of protest numbers and all that stuff. But it is a symptom or a result of cynicism about trust in government. And it's not just here in Vancouver. There's a lack of trust in a lot of governments. And, you know, you see it in America, you see Trump doesn't even believe the election results. So, you know, this is a real problem everywhere. And I think it's something that should be a priority for government to show that there is a better way to do this, and you have to trust government, you know. And I think that's a communications problem. I'm sure that there's 43 communication staff at City Hall that might want to talk about this. So, you know, there's gotta.
Jesus. It's been a while, babe.
So, you know, I think, but at the end of the day, you have to let the ultimate way to deal with this. I mean, the people of Vancouver elected a park board that is majority Green Cope. They are aligned on this issue clearly and are likely going to push forward with this. They might come to their senses and accept what John is calling, he's going to refer the motion to staff. They may accept that. I hope they do. But if they don't, it just feeds into the narrative of cynicism about process. because
I don't
there is a
believe
process. There is a process right in the middle. We're in the middle of a process of Park
right.
Board that's about to come to us in June on this issue. And sure, that might be late for summer, but this stuff takes time. I mean, that's all the other issue is. It's this weird dichotomy. People want more consultation, but man, they hate slow government. So you sort of have this weird oxymoronic situation.
I'm weird
In
that way
government.
because I feel that. I'm like, how
Yeah,
is it taking till June on an issue that has been plaguing us, pardon that pun, but plaguing us since this pandemic began? And with Green Cope, that Green Cope Alliance, the best way to fix this problem is in the next election, which is next year. You
that's
vote against the Green
oh,
Cope, period, and they'll find out. I don't think they realize the
classic.
level of
Vote
pushback.
vote the bums out. That's the old, the adage, right? Just get them out. That's how
But then
democracy gives you a tool.
that's how you end up though with a vision or majority, right? Is that you're voting, the pendulum swings over here and then it swings over there because I mean, I was a novice municipal voter when it comes to choosing the park board commissioner. I remember the length of the ballot that we faced in that election was just mind boggling, having to know, we're picking school board, we're picking park board. It's not as simple. Like it was, I felt like I didn't study hard enough for this exam. And it's not made easy for the voter, obviously. So I went through the bios. And I read up and we're allowed to take our phones in, right? And in the moment, I was like, I can't remember Dave Demers, public consultation. Okay.
That was
I'm
in his
not
bio?
kidding you. It still is.
Oh boy. It must be a typo.
No, it's
No,
yet again.
no, or it's like,
But it's the public trust piece that comes with that. I mean, and it's like, let's take it off the park board for a second, because we can in 2022, like you said, vote them out and put everything back to the way it was before. And we just have to survive this time where there is no consultation, and it is not the will of the people, it's the will of a few. So if they're going to do it, they're going to do it, but we can hold their feet to the fire ultimately at the ballot box. So hopefully more people turn out to vote in a municipal election and do so with knowledge. But let's talk about the mayor for a little bit, because I got another press release this week.
Oh boy, is he doing something? Is he getting some stuff done?
No.
It's a press release though. It's written on paper, so that's something.
It was
right?
like,
it probably isn't. They're probably just digital.
Just in, George. This just in. He's against racism.
Isn't that the third time he said that this month? Yeah. Well, good for him, aren't we all?
Yes, we all are.
He did, and he called. Yeah, and he was. Yeah. I don't know.
It bugs me. It's like, really? You think I'm that dumb?
Is there a reason? What was the reason? Was it because of the VPD or what was it?
There was defacing. There were anti-Semitic graffiti. Which is it's awful. There's no question. It's awful.
What's the solution? What's in the press release? Did he talk about solutions to this? Yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, I think that with the mayor is this. That what is his goal for this term? What does he want to achieve? I've never really had a sense of that. We've talked a lot about that. He won really by accident. I don't think he had a real understanding of what to do as mayor and what he wanted to achieve. I don't think he understood the complexities of the city hall. He'd never been there.
Yeah.
And he probably thought it would be just like Vision. He'd be able to get all this stuff done. And he knew he had a complicated council. So his only thing he can do now is send strongly worded letters to other levels of government about issues that are a real problem in Vancouver, and then announce stuff that separate him out in a way that he thinks will help him in the next election. It's desperate really in his camp to follow this process because hey, it might work because there might be 20 people running for mayor next time, but it's definitely. People are, there's actually a protest on Friday at that I saw at the Roundhouse against the mayor by his house. Like they found out where he lives, and they're going to do a protest in Yaletown about his crappiness as a mayor. Yes. Yaletown's pretty angry. I live in Yaletown, as you know. Downtown South, are very angry because of what's happening and the movement of a lot of the challenges that we have in the downtown east side are now moving into Yaletown, and a lot of people are not feeling safe down there. And of course, it's the data is showing that that's true. So, it's not.
Again, I like to point this out because it's a lesson that you taught me very early on in UnSpun. In taking over as mayor, some would think or believe that they can go in there and have really meaningful, impactful change swiftly. And once you get in and you see the amount of red tape involved in municipal politics, that is simply not, you're not the CEO that gets to go, you're out, you're out, you're in, you're done, you're done. So there's something to be said for, cutting some slack to Kennedy-Stewart because of what you just said, that he didn't really know what he was getting into. So he promised the world and then, found that he can do very little because he doesn't really know how it works. And it's very complex. And I tap into your knowledge all the time on the inner workings of council and city hall and city staff and this budget or this budget. Like how many times have I said, where's the budget? And you're like, they're budgets,
Yeah. It's it's of course it's government. I mean, and we've talked about this before. Anybody who goes from uses their business acumen as a great thing to be in government and be in politics is quite often the exact wrong personality to be in office, because you will be immediately frustrated by the speed at which things don't happen. So you really have to understand that. But that being said, it's really important that you have a focus of what you want to achieve, one or two things that you say, and then you just really got to lobby. In the case of the mayor and any of those councillors who should have early on decided what do they want to achieve in their 4 years. Each one of them should, or is it a group? What do we want to do in the next 2 years, or 4 years? And how do we do that? Okay, so I want this issue. I know I've got these people. You got to work the back room and then work the floor and sell it and get support from your team. And then, so that's where it starts. And then it goes to staff. And how do you make sure staff prioritize it? But then, of course, what's happened, as we have talked about, the 200 plus motions that this council have brought that are all over the map, that are inundating staff. So staff are lost in not able to actually do their basic jobs, because anything that comes from council gets approved by council becomes a priority for staff. Because, of course, just like the park board we talked about earlier wants this report. They want, why is June? Why is it taking so long? Well, I mean, park board hasn't been as bad as City Hall, but certainly because if you slow down bureaucracy even further, guess what happens? Everything else gets slower.
Everything.
So in the case of Vancouver, when people talk about permits, they talk about road repairs, they talk about whatever. Everything gets slowed down in government if you keep giving them too many tasks. You have
because
to be
the priorities shift, right? You pile it on. Oh my gosh.
It's better as a politician. I mean, I had a lot of motions when I was in office for sure. But I used it. It was definitely a weapon because I was pretty, stuck there with a massive majority. Yeah. But if the way it should work, if you achieve, because the basic theme of everything I did was always transparency and finances. Almost all my motions, and then fun. I had a lot of motions related to New Year's Eve and other motions related to, engaging residents and making things more fun in our city. So those were my three things that everything kind of fed through that. So I was always able to speak about those issues. Certainly, it's always, I was a counselor of love for a while because I did a motion on the love locks that went through Park Board. And John Cooper and I got that done. And then New York Times did a story and called me the counselor of love because of that. And that's sort of fun, love. And then also finances. You choose your thing, your lane, and you stick to it. So even if it's one motion or 3 or 10, but they should be a theme and it should provide the same outcome at the end of what you're trying to achieve. And I get the sense from this councillor, just like when we were talking.
Yeah, it's like splattered paintball.
And we don't even get into the handgun issue in the mayor. I mean, there's another, that's a total, play on him to look tough on crime. It's just out of control. And I think staff are just going, what do we do? What do we do? What are we supposed to do?
Keep coming to work, keep showing up, do whatever they tell us to do where nothing gets done. Let's talk about John Horgan's announcement Site C.
Yes, a press conference.
Yeah.
Not really a press conference. I mean, it was about what was amazing that he continued to point fingers at the Liberals, BC Liberals.
Again.
Again, same theme here. It's, okay, but you have been now there for how many years? 3 years? 3.5 years? At some point. 2 elections, 3 years or more now. I can't remember now.
It's 3 because it would have been 4 years. Right? So it's an early election. So, yeah.
Right. So, this clearly they had the report before the last election. They got the report as Vaughn Palmer outlined the timeline on this. It's very, very interesting that they did have the report in their hands, and then the decision to have an election was made, and the report was buried and disappeared and didn't come out until really long after the election. And that is, and now we have this result. We're hearing all these stories about relationships with Hydro and this independence committee and Ernst and Young, and God, it's just like, what is going on here? Nobody wanted to admit that it's going to be 3 or 4 years late, and over budget. And
way over
sometimes
budget. But
big projects would do that.
Yeah, and the simplified sort of note that they hope to lob into the general public's ears is it will cost more to stop than it will to continue. And if it stops and costs more, your hydro bill's going up right away. Whereas if it continues, it will, like, those are like the nuggets that were falling from it. And yet at the same time, I didn't feel like I got, other than being able to follow up with the likes of Vaughn Palmer writing up the timeline, the waters have become so muddied with regard to Site C. People that were for it are against it. People that were against it are for it. It's become this behemoth. And when they're saying, remember in the Kootenays when dams were built there in the 70s and there was all pushback on that, and now what would we do without those? And it's like, wait, that's a sparkly thing. You know what?
Yeah.
What are we? And then somebody just goes, well, at least it's not a pipeline. It's like, well, but, you know, there's so much spin around this particular subject matter. So if it's blame game on one hand, and then is it successful down the road? Do you take credit for it? Is that how that works?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think that they have to take some responsibility for the cost overruns. Absolutely. That's related to their decisions on a whole bunch of things. But anyways, it's happening. It's clean energy. I know people are upset about the amount of space being used for this, but we have the cleanest energy because of our hydro. And the only other option that's cleaner, people, is
nuclear.
Bill Gates is pushing us hard is nuclear power. He's got a new book out, talks a lot about that. So, you know, if you want to solve the world's greenhouse gas emission problems,
when we're plugging in our car, the energy comes from somewhere. If it's not fossil fuels, it's hydroelectric, and if it's not hydroelectric, it's nuclear. So.
Well, and then if you're in Texas, you have oil. You have this weird infrastructure that then causes all the lights to go out. So
weird.
We are very, very blessed and lucky in this province, as they are in Norway. Very similar makeup in their geography as we have in British Columbia, and they also have a robust oil and gas industry. Here's a country where people will go, oh, yeah, it's Norway. They're so alternative. Scandinavia, Greta Thunberg. Woo. But they have a ton of money. Because they have oil and gas, which they aren't going to be
high
using.
Taxes. And high taxes.
But they also have hydro, which powers their country. They plan to have all cars by electric. I think it's in 2 years in Norway. It's crazy. Here's a country that produces oil and gas but doesn't actually use it. But hey, it pays for everything else they do. And so I think BC has this opportunity to be similar to Norway if we were to embrace the way our system works. And I think Bill Gates' book just came out. It's about basically the greenhouse, the world's I think it's called How We Solve the Climate Crisis or something like that. I have to check, but we'll
report back. Let's report back on that one, because I think that's a good note to required reading. We should all be reading a bit more.
Yes.
Let's go to federal. Some rumblings that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sounds like he's positioning himself to call an election. And at the same time, George, obviously the unspun piece here is there's no way we're headed to the polls until every Canadian has gotten a vaccine.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and once we get those vaccines, the people who are frustrated by the vaccine rollout, I am sure Trudeau is frustrated as well, because he wants to get this stuff done so that he can call his election. Because he can then say, I did it. You're welcome. We're problem solved. So when you sit there and say, Trudeau, you aren't doing it fast enough, he's like, I know I'm not doing it fast enough because I want to call an election before the summer. Before this, because nobody wants an election in the summer. No. It's the worst time. Yeah. So he is definitely prioritizing an election, if possible, before July. But if he has to wait, he'll probably call a summer election if he has to. But as soon as that moment comes where we are somewhat more free and we see a really bright light at the end of that tunnel, I think you see a snap election called. And the
second the final second dose is given, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dosing.
It's sort of the opposite of Horgan. It's just sort of just a point, because Horgan called his election.
You're pointing.
Yeah. Horgan called his election I feel that actually was even more cynical than what Trudeau was planning in a way, to call it at the most vulnerable time possible when we were all freaking out. Whereas now calling an election when we're saying there is hope. I think it's at least a better message. I'm not saying, hey, I'm a Trudeau fan. I'm just saying, look, this is the cynicism of calling an election back in October was brutal. And this
I see what you're saying.
And this makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you call an election if you got a minority government when you achieve a huge success? Of course.
Right. When you pull your country through a pandemic, when held in comparison to others with, I would say, a margin of success, if you can even mark success with deaths. I mean, it's been a horrific time, but the leadership piece for I would say the majority of Canadians is feeling that at least he's made himself available and front facing, and he's erred on the side of science. And I don't know what we're going to be, what it's going to be. I look forward to it, and yet don't know what I'll do with my time, where I don't start my day with what do the prime ministers say? What are the first ministers saying? What are the science saying? The afternoon we check in with the provincial health officer. We've got these. I look forward to a time where I'm not an armchair epidemiologist. Let's talk about those just for a quick second here. Dr. Bonnie Henry, I defer to the science all the time. We jokingly spar about pushback and challenge, but boy, she got dragged over the coals after having the much anticipated Monday press briefing where our mass vaccination rollout plan was shared with the province, and where Dr. Henry, rather controversially in that moment, it seemed, decided to announce that as opposed to a 42-day window between the first and second dose of the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine, or I guess AstraZeneca is not, I'm not sure whether it was at play at that moment, was it?
No, but that's a two-booster. The one-dose ones were good. The Johnson & Johnson, which we
Johnson, right, single dose is different. But moving those, the window from 42 days to 4 months was a little bit of a gasp moment until people realized that means that tens of thousands of more people will be vaccinated sooner. And that the good news is the real life data that she was referencing out of Israel and out of the UK was that the first priming dose was offering much higher protection than was noted in studies, because the studies, obviously the trials were shortened so that we could get vaccines to market faster. So it was all this, but the pushback, oh my gosh, George.
Yeah, it was. And then of course the next day the CDC, I think, comes out saying, yeah, she's probably right. So I think,
and then the National Health Board of Canada said she's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And other countries are showing it. I mean, I honestly, I'm at the point where the only thing I thought about when I heard that was like 4 months. Okay, let me see if I get my shot in July. It's like, crap. Like, I'm just thinking, when do I get to travel again? That's the math. That's the only thing that I was thinking. I'm thinking, I'm sure Bonnie knows what she's doing. I mean, she's pretty much got, she's one of the best, doctors in this space and have dealt with pandemics and all these things for her entire career.
Globally, yeah.
I'm trying to think, okay, I think she's got that covered. What, the communications and the strategy and, some of the opaqueness of that are maybe not always her decision. I don't know, of the process is another thing. But frankly, she's been alluding to this for a while. She's been saying this since like December, since the vaccine started coming out, that there is potential extension of that period of time. And at first, I think she was saying it was, 21 days instead of, let's go 40. It
was 21, 28, 36, 42, and now 4 months. Yeah. And what's interesting, George, is that people are like, the people that are playing armchair epidemiologists are freaking out because they're like, we're not guinea pigs. You have to listen to what the pharmaceutical companies that brought these to market are saying. And the pharmaceutical companies are coming to the defense of this move because of the real life data. Like, this is based in actually the dose window being wider might actually make the vaccine effective longer. Because I don't know, I've had the Pfizer vaccine because of being an essential caregiver with my dad. I had the first dose on January 10th. I had the second dose 42 days later. Now, will I find out 6 months from now, because I had a 42-day window and not a 4-month window, that I need to get vaccinated again in 6 months, where people who waited 4 months...
Guess who I'm not going to ask? I'm not going to ask you that question.
No, you're going to ask...
Who's the scientist? You tell me. I don't know.
Exactly.
Like, maybe we'll never need another shot again on this. I don't know. But
please.
Tell me what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it so I can do it. Thank you very much.
So I'm telling you on the travel thing though, what the scientists are saying in terms of 1 dose, 2 dose, whatever, it's not really about how we are with the vaccine. It's until all of us are safe, none of us are safe. So our travel restrictions, and that's why people are talking about 2022 and fall of 2022. I know. It's one of those, it might not be that, but there, with the variants of concern, there's conversation until everybody can be inoculated. So what we need to do is roll out vaccines as quickly as possible. But that takes us to 30 minutes. So I'm just going to give a little plug to my column. That's a little bit of a contentious issue to bring up, but I'm hopefully going to find some middle on public trust with policing and not painting all officers with the same tarnish that is often in our headlines, sadly, of those who behave unbecoming to the uniform. And I just felt to open up the conversation, and you'll see I have a disclaimer in there because I'm related to a police officer who is an outstanding individual. And no matter where I am in the world, if I had only one phone call, I would phone her because she would move heaven and earth to protect anybody and everyone. So there's that to keep in mind when you're thinking in your head, all police are now the enemy. They're not. So read my column at the Orca.ca.
The Orca.
What about your most recent column? Your most recent one is about...
well, my next one will come out this next week. So I'm working on that one. I'm thinking it might be related to because we talked about mine last week, but the next Vancouver is awesome. I'm thinking this polling petition thing might be a good one. I'm feeling a bit of...
If you missed it last week, it is a very relevant column about how we need to budget for garbage and just the mess that our city all of a sudden is in. There needs to be a budget line stepped up to make the Lower Mainland really as pristine as it once was.
Without increasing the budget overall. It's possible, people.
Find it elsewhere. All right. Say goodbye, George.
Bye-bye.